welcome to another edition of Mondays in Midtown. I'm Mark Zinn. We took the crew of Mondays in Midtown on the road to Jefferson City this week to have you, the viewer, experience what state government's all about. There's different issues on the ballot this year, and of course a state auditor race. But what does that mean? Hopefully this show can help you as a constituent of Missouri to help to understand what state government is all about. But before we start talking about state government, we sat down with Eva Patel, author of Acts of Faith, a book Bill Clinton calls a beautifully written story of discovery and hope. And here is our interview. Ms. Patel, thank you for coming on Mondays in Midtown.
Thank you for having me.
We recently had the 9th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, and there was a lot of controversy surrounding a Christian minister who wanted to burn the Quran on the anniversary. What would you say to him and other U.S. citizens that have this kind of view of Islam versus the U.S.?
So I actually think the weekend of September 11th this past year was really inspiring in America.
How so?
Well, the reason is because in this country, when the faces of intolerance show themselves, like this pastor from Florida, the forces of inclusiveness come out, and they come out strong. And so all over the country, the way that people responded to that act of intolerance was by showing inclusion through interfaith service projects. My personal favorite example of a project was the Muslim community in Gainesville, Florida, which is the same city that this pastor is from. They responded to the provocation of a threat to burn the Quran by organizing an interfaith book drive, and those thousands of books that they collected went to the local library system in Gainesville. And what they were basically saying was, you're not just insulting us as Muslims by your threat to burn the Quran. You are dividing us as Americans, and Americans won't be divided by faith, right? In America, we have respect for people of all faiths. In America, we are better together, and we're going to oppose your deliberate act of intolerance by showing you what America is about. And America is about people from different backgrounds coming together to serve others.
What about other, I guess you could say, people of Islam throughout the world who look down on this event and maybe to do acts of terrorism? And you talk about in your book, terrorism is, why is it so appealing? Why is terrorism so appealing to certain members of the Islamic faith?
So, part of what I talk about in my book is that there are literally factories and institutions of terrorism in the world, and they recruit young people, they brainwash them, they train them, they mobilize them, they network them, and part of what we're doing at the Interfaith Youth Corps is trying to be the opposite of that, trying to be a factory, a force, an institution of interfaith cooperation that says to young people, your talents, your identity, your direction in the world ought to be about being an interfaith leader, being a bridge between people from different faiths, bringing people together in understanding and service, right? So the reason I think that terrorism is a high-profile activity in the world right now is because of these very focused institutions that recruit young people and make it a high-profile activity. And I just think in order to defeat those kinds of institutions, we have to be tripling our recruitment of young people for interfaith leadership and showing how magnificent it is to be bringing people from different faiths together.
Finally, real quickly too, a lot of the students here, the freshmen read your book, mandatory for as they came in here to SLU.
Mandatory. I went to college too, and I know what mandatory means.
I didn't read my freshman book, just to set the record straight. But if they could take one thing away, and even our viewers who didn't read your book, they could take one thing away from your speech tonight and your book, what would that be?
We need a new generation of interfaith leaders. There are people in the world who want to make religion a bomb of destruction. There are people who want to make it a barrier of division. We need a critical mass of interfaith leaders saying religion is about being a bridge of cooperation, and we are going to build those bridges.
It's cool. I mean, I think it's great, what you just said and talking about it, but what concrete things can people do to bridge this gap?
Right. So the first thing is to develop interfaith literacy. And the way I define interfaith literacy is to know how your own tradition inspires interfaith cooperation, how the scripture, the heroes, the stories of your Catholic faith or your Jewish faith inspire, indeed require you to be an interfaith leader. The second thing is to know the history of interfaith cooperation in your community or your country. And America is a nation that I think was built on interfaith cooperation. The Civil Rights Movement was a great interfaith movement, for example. And the third thing is to identify shared values between different religions: mercy, compassion, service. How do different religions speak to those values? That's interfaith literacy. But what's even more important is interfaith leadership, which is to act on the command in your faith to bring people together in service. It is to act on the shared values of mercy and compassion and service between faiths. It is to write the new chapter in the history of interfaith cooperation in this country.
I'm looking forward to your speech tonight. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought it was a really inspirational type thing because I read his book and I really enjoyed his book, and I think that he has a point whenever he talks about reaching out to the youth and trying to pull them together to talk about their faith.
But I really liked his ideas about courage and digging into your faith and seeing what courage and previous leaders have done.
I think he did an effective job of sharing his experiences and relating it to interfaith dialogue.
I thought he was obviously very inspiring. I really liked how he introduced the human side of the intolerance.
Coming in here as a Christian, I see and hear a lot of some of the intolerance towards Muslims today. So I thought it was eye-opening. I think it's something that we need in this country right now because everything's centering around terrorists and Muslims and everybody's horrible. We should be focusing on the melting pot that we are, and I think his speech went a long way in proclaiming that.
And we thank him for coming on Mondays in Midtown. Again, his book's called Act of Faith, a book Bill Clinton praised, and it's a good book. I started reading it, and hopefully we can have a discussion soon about it when we start up Mondays in Midtown's book club, coming to a local library or bookstore near you, I'm sure. Right now, let's take you inside that building behind me, the state capitol. It's pretty cool. Located just off the banks of the Missouri River, the current Missouri Capitol building, which was finished in 1917, rises 238 feet above ground. It features breathtaking portraits and murals from around the world.
My father was in the governor's office when they were painting the Thomas Hart Benton murals, and Father was informed about Boss Pendergast, Frankie and Johnny, all the characters in the murals. And Thomas Hart Benton is one of the most outstanding regional painters in America. His work is known in Czechoslovakia, different parts of the world, and the State Department called me wanting to know where they could be viewed. So naturally here in town at our wonderful Capitol building, also in Independence, Missouri, and the Nelson Art Gallery is what I'm aware of.
And since it's a state capitol, the Capitol building is home to the two legislative bodies, the House and the Senate. Other offices such as the governor's, Secretary of State, Lieutenant Governor, and State Treasurer are also here, as is the State Auditor's Office. Susan Monty is up for re-election this year. But we couldn't get her or anyone else to go on camera for an interview, so we looked at museums like this one, and a replica of the USS Missouri, which, let me tell you, is one large ship. But my favorite part had to be the interactive Civil War exhibit and museum, or the statues of famous Missourians that line the hallways of the state capitol. Our good friend Bob Barker went to high school in Springfield and went to Drury University. And of course, one of my favorite Missouri residents, Jack Buck, legendary broadcaster. And then there's Stan the Man. So if you've never been to Jeff City or the Capitol, you gotta go! Well, we met some interesting people in Jefferson City. Here's what they had to say. You look at this state house for the first time, you're like, proud to be in Missouri, you know?
I'm a transplant.
You're a transplant? Yeah. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Indiana.
Indiana. Well, I'm sure our state house is better than Indiana's, I would assume.
I assume so. I think it's bigger.
Okay, there weren't that many fun people in Jefferson City. That's probably because the Senate and the House are on recess, and ipso facto, the place is like a ghost town. So we traveled outside the city, and our first stop is here at Summit Lake Winery. Pretty cool place on top of a bluff that overlooks Highway 54, the Missouri River, and Jefferson City. We found some interesting people. Got a glass of wine too. It's called Ideal with Friends. supposed to be light-bodied. Tastes good too. We're here with Susie and Barbara at the Summit Lake Winery. You've both lived in Jeff City for a long time. What's your favorite part about Jefferson City?
I love all of it. I like the safety of it, the small town, and yet it's a big town too because all of our legislators are here all the time, and the governor lives here, and the Supreme Court's all here.
Do you ever get to see any of the governor, the lieutenant governor, or state auditor walking around
Oh,
town?
sure we do, yeah.
My husband and I have played tennis with several of the governors.
That's pretty cool.
And
Who usually wins?
They do, of course.
Oh, what is that all about? I think it's important to note as well that it's Susie's birthday today, which happens to be
fine. That makes us
our
twins.
birthday. We're both our birthdays today. October 6th. We're both the dominating Libras.
Few years difference here.
Nah, not many. It's fine. You can't. We're in the shade too, so I think we all look young. I think
Right, we are.
We're all young. Barbara, what's your favorite part about Jefferson City?
I just like the small town aspect of it. We came here from the Washington, D.C. area, Springfield, Virginia.
little bit
It was a nice
different.
place to raise
Sure.
children.
So you go from
They're
the
gone now, though,
federal
but-
government to state government, huh?
Not exactly, but sort of, yeah.
What do you guys, you talk about coming to the winery, I guess, to have fun. What else do you have to do for fun? What's fun to do around here?
Well, I still play tennis. That's the fun thing I do.
I don't have that many fun things anymore. I'm older. But I did play tennis. It's a big tennis town. It's a big
I'm sure
tennis
that you both could beat me in tennis. I haven't played in a while. What do you think about this election coming up? We gotta. It's a political town. You can't. It's hard for you. You're driving any road in Jefferson City. Everyone's got yard signs up for any different election, from the judge to the circuit attorney to the state auditor race. So what do you think's going to happen in November, in the federal level and the state level? What do you think's going to happen?
Well, in Missouri, it's going to be between two families, the Carnahans and the Bloods.
It's
both big political families.
Right.
Family dynasties. Yeah.
Yes, they are.
And most of us are ready for a change.
So we need
Not
someone.
like what we had with
2 years
Obama,
ago.
but a real change.
When are you ladies gonna run? You can run for coroner, right?
Oh yeah, I could do that. I could do that.
We'll be right back from Jefferson City. Monday, a dreaded day that marks the beginning of another week of routine. The beginning of alarm clocks, meeting times, and homework. Fortunately, there's a whole TV show dedicated to breaking these tedious habits. So relax, breathe in the air around you, and take in a glass of Mondays in Midtown. And welcome back. There's a lot of cool things in Jefferson City, but it's not all about the destination. It's about the journey getting there. Here's what I'm talking about. And so we went a little bit more north of the winery, and now we're in Columbia. I think that's a good point to surprise my great friend Nick Savio, who is a senior here at Mizzou, inside of his house. So let's go inside. This is the producer, our producer for Mondays in Midtown, Tim. He's going to take the lead here. Again, Nick Savio does not know we're in here. It's kind of like Publishers Clearinghouse. Just want to stop by and say hi. Hello. Savio, how you doing?
No, I told him.
Surprise, Nick Savio. Nick Savio isn't the only thing at Mizzou. So is Faroe Field. That's the home of the Tigers. And of course, my favorite broadcaster on the radio, Mike Kelly. I think it's important to note that we do not speed in work zones. No passing in work zones either. Once the work zone has ended, you then can increase your speed to the normal speed limit posted on the side of the highway. Well, we had a lot of fun in Columbia, and everyone wants some souvenirs on trips to Jefferson City or anywhere you go, and unfortunately, the place behind me is closed. This place is Ozark Land. Anything you could ever want is here. Moccasins, taffy, t-shirts. wind bells. So this is our, as we wind down our experience in Jefferson City, I think it's neat to come to a city like Kingdom City, which is a crossroads. Mexico, Fulton, Jefferson City, and the Ozarks. This car is about to hit me. Come on through, you're fine. The kind of great people in Missouri like that car. So the next time you come to Kingdom City for the Ozarks or Jeff City or Mizzou, stop at Ozark Land. I love rural Missouri. Flash forward, it's now time for the Power Panel. Thanks, Jeff City, Mark. And it is time for the Power Panel right now. We got some great people on our panel this week, starting with John Paul Johnson. He is the senior political correspondent for Mondays in Midtown. Carolyn Rutledge, she's an SGA senator, a decent person. And our wild card of the week, author and humorist Barry Pomegranate, who looks just like my brother, Mike. I had no relation, though, apparently. Thanks for being on the panel this week, guys.
Thanks,
you.
Mark.
Let's start out of New York. Republican candidate for governor there, Carl Palladino, made some comments over the weekend at, I guess, a synagogue. And if I can pull some of them, he said that he doesn't want children brainwashed into thinking that homosexuality is acceptable. And also he said that's not how God created us, and that's not the example that we should be showing our children. Carolyn, what's going on with Carl Palladino?
You know, if you look at his poll numbers, was he even close to winning? Probably not. Did he lose any supporters over this? Maybe made some log cabin Republicans angry. Lose supporters, though? I don't think so. I think it just gave a little more name to the New York governor race, but other than that, he wasn't going to win. End of story.
I think Carl Palladino forgot what state he was in. If he said this in Georgia or Florida or Mississippi, he probably would have gained some voters, but he's in New York, one of the most liberal states in the union. As Caroline said, he was drastically down in the poll numbers. I think on average, Real Clear Politics, he's down 18 percentage points. Andrew Cuomo, is beloved. I mean, he has a famous name. His father was Mario Cuomo, who served 3 terms. So Palladino didn't have a shot. But what I will say, I do like the fact that the guy he's very outspoken in terms of his positions, and you really don't see that a lot in mainstream politics. So I'll give him credit for that at least.
Mike, his opponents, rep for his opponents, saying that this just proves that Carl Palladino is out of touch with mainstream New Yorkers. Do you agree?
Yeah, totally. The only way I could really see this making sense is if it's some sort of stunt. But like you were saying, I think he picked the wrong place, the wrong arena to perform such a stunt. However, I think it exposes a lot of how illogical this man must be. Like, he sounds like typical homophobes who, if someone's ever indicted as being a homophobe, the first thing they always say is, "Oh, I've got a gay friend." And it says here, he's like, "Oh, I've got gay people on my staff, and if I wouldn't mind them being a part of my staff if I got elected." Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, my question is, why would the Hasidic Jews have Carl Palladino of all people give this message? I mean, if you're doing something on family values, why do you want the man who cheated on his wife and has a 10-year-old illegitimate daughter giving the message about homosexuals?
Yeah, it doesn't seem.
Does he represent the typical family in New York, Carolyn?
Probably not. Just
yeah.
not in New York.
Yeah, it doesn't seem too in tune with family values. And also politically, I don't like how this situation has kind of taken a religious stance, where how you define your argument comes down to religious premises, which may apply for a man like Carl Palladino, but it doesn't go across the board.
And you're referring to how Carl Palladino said this is basically what the Catholic Church thinks, and if Cuomo has a problem, you should take it up with his parish priest.
Well, I don't think he even necessarily addressed the Catholic Church or any specific church in general. It's just that there's the one quote that says that that's not how God created us. And I think that's a really illogical quote, because is he saying that God didn't create these homosexuals, or are they created by something else? Or, I mean, if it's hard to say that they can be wrong when a religious man believes that everything is created in the image of God.
Carolyn, is this the views of the Catholic Church?
Not how he puts it. I would say, if it was one quote, it might be different. But here's an article full of quotes from this guy about essentially being a homophobe. So
that's interesting. JPJ, final thoughts on Carl Palladino? Want to have him over for coffee tonight?
I wouldn't want Carl Palladino over for anything. He might take me out.
We'll go there, but okay.
His words.
His words. You're right. Fine. Another thing we're looking at is Proposition A, which is on the Missouri ballot here in November 2nd. We'll continue to look at these initiatives as we roll through the last month of before the election. And really, it's saying, hey, Missouri, do you want cities like, there's two things it's saying. Do you want cities like Kansas City and St. Louis to be able to repeal their own earnings tax? And do you want to make, or you want to have no other city have this earnings tax? So those are the two issues you're looking at. KC officials have been slamming Mayor Slay about this issue, saying he's not paying enough attention to the November ballot issue. But he's saying that he thinks it's going to pass in November, and we should focus on April when it comes down to dealing with a third of the city's budget. JPJ, is this a smart move?
I think it's a smart move. You have to look at the context of what Mayor Slay is looking at. In 2 weeks, you have this big national election where Republicans are going to make large gains in Congress. They're going to make large gains specifically in the House of Representatives. Some 60 seats the Democrats won in 2006 and 2008 are up, and taxes are a big issue. So repealing taxes in the cities would go over well for many conservative Democrats, many independents, and quite frankly, the vast majority of Republicans.
The question you got to ask is, what's going to happen to these cities? $140 million out of the budget. Again, that's like the size of the city's public safety department.
Well, we didn't say practicality was at play here. We said politics is at play here from a political standpoint. From a political standpoint, the economy is suffering. People are struggling. People don't have money to make ends meet, and they might feel that less taxes might be the way to go. It might reduce spending, and that'll keep the government out of their pocket. So from a political standpoint, it makes a lot of sense, but from a pragmatist standpoint, I mean, it's going to suffer 10 years from now.
We're going to collapse the whole city just to save people a couple bucks?
According to Alderman Conway, he said if it passes in April, we just won't have a city in 10 years. Is that a little drastic?
I don't know. He's a pretty smart guy. He's an accountant and a lawyer. He's the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee for the Board of Aldermen. So him saying that, when I read the same story, read that quote, I'm like, ooh, Steve, what are you trying to do? But it's true. A third of your budget slashed.
Right.
And of course, it's going to be phased if they do repeal it in April. But still, $140 million is a lot of money that you can't really just, it's hard to take out of a city's operating budget.
And there's no bones about it. The city's broke as it is. That's why you're seeing red light cameras on intersections where no cars ever drive. And the big thing about this is they have no idea for how to replace the funds. Like, where are you going to get all the money if you cut that? And although they're addressing, I guess, the kind of old system of economics, and that the city does need to look forward in a new way. But to me, it just seems like lighting a match under your rear end and just to burn you to see if you jump, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. We'll have to see what happens. I think it will probably pass in November statewide, meaning no other cities will be able to have an earnings tax, which I guess is kind of unfair, even though, say what you want about taxes, and then it'll go back to St. Louis in April. And for St. Louis, that means the next election, 5 months later, the municipal election, voters will decide to repeal it. So we'll be watching that story, of course. Finally, let's talk about St. Louis sports. The Rams got clobbered yesterday in Detroit. They did not tame the Lions, as Smash said they were going to do. The joke. 44-6 was the score there. What happened to the Rams, Mike? Barry?
Well, I'm not quite a football expert, and I don't know why you called me Mike.
I don't either.
But what it looks like to me is that the Lions scored more points than the Rams. And anytime that happens, they're going to end up coming away with the victory.
But this, JPJ, 44-6, they scored a lot more points than the Rams. I thought everyone's like, oh, the Rams are 500. Well, I think I said that on last week's show.
This is
a turnaround for the Rams, and well, just more of the same, or?
Well, number one, we were in Detroit. So home field advantage played a big role. The Lions have been hungering for a victory. They were on the cusp of going 0-4.
No pun intended.
No pun exactly. No pun intended. Well, we can go pun intended.
No pun intended either way. It's fun. This is Mondays in Midtown. We're having fun.
Exactly. But you have to understand, Mark Clayton went out. That was Sam Bradford's favorite receiver, and Mark Clayton was actually his teammate back at Oklahoma a couple years back. So when you don't have a receiving game, then you're going to depend on Steven Jackson. Steven Jackson still has that groin injury from a couple weeks ago, and when you put all your pressure on the defense to stop the Lions, who they do have a number of offensive weapons, it was a recipe for a disaster, and you saw it.
Yeah. Caroline, who cares about the Rams? What about the Blues? They're doing well, right?
Blues are doing great. 2 wins here. Maybe you'll start focusing on them instead of the Rams.
Well, who knows? Who cares? When it comes down to it, no one's going to win because I'm not going to go there. Well, that's a lot of fun. Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's go back to Mark in Jeff City. Great panel as always. It's now time for Lyle's Corner.
Whoa, it's Lyle's Corner, boys and girls, come on down. You'll learn about cool things around the town. It's Lyle's Corner!
Alright guys, so I'm heading out of St. Louis. For this week's episode of Lyle's Corner, I'm going to be making a journey to Memphis, Tennessee to visit a certain Canis Potter, and with her, run an epic 5K mud race in the city of Memphis, and there'll be mud, there'll be running, there's bound to be some sort of entertainment, and just a good old general trip across some states in this beautiful country we call America.
Now that everybody's here, could we please have your attention? There is nothing left to fear. Now that Bigfoot is captured, and all the children really light, light. And all the children really light, right. Now all the children all
Alright, so our first stop on the tour to Memphis is the National Civil Rights Museum, along with the hotel, which you can see right here at the end of the shot, where a certain Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, cutting short his life and the great work he was doing for the civil rights movement and for the diversity of our country. Alright guys, we're at our second stop here in Memphis, the Elmwood Cemetery. There are 13 Confederate generals buried here, lots of people who died from yellow fever, and the first black millionaire in Memphis. So it's a little creepy, but yeah. This is stop number 3. We're at Overton Park, the equivalent of Forest Park to Memphis. And we're at Levity Shell, kind of like their Muni, except for much smaller. Listening to a local blues with a twist of rock guy play some music. So it's very entertaining. Alright guys, we're here on stop 4. Stop 4, Jones Orchard. We're going to do a little bit of pumpkin picking and corn maze meandering. The 2010 Wolf, as Jones Orchard has named their beautiful corn maze, which I'll show you a picture in a minute. But yeah, we're gonna hopefully get a big pumpkin. The biggest one you can find is $10 today, so we're looking to get a 30-pounder. I don't know if I'm lost or just losing my mind, which is another form of being lost. This maze just goes on forever. I just can't seem to find where I'm going. Well guys, we got our prize winner for $10. Come by our apartment sometime in the next couple of weeks to see what we make of this bad boy and to share in the probably 15 pounds of pumpkin seeds we'll have. We are here. Love Mud 2010. Dun 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 dun. Bum bum. Bum bum. Bum bum. This is the product of Mud Love 2010. You can see there are people all around me emerging from the mud pit, full of mud, muddy to the bone, muddy to the head to the toe. And check this shit out. That's how you do this shit. In a little bit, we're gonna head and well, right now we're gonna head and clean up at the watering station, but then we'll go back and film some people actually jumping into the mud pit, so you guys can get some live action. And I mean, this is what it's all about, being young, right? Getting down and dirty while we can, while we're still kids. Love mud.
Shades are down.
Alright
Who
guys,
they cannot see, he's coming out of his costume.
this is kind of the end of Love Mud 2010 for us. They got mud fights still going on, they got concerts, they got prizes and giveaways later, and they got some food and everything over there, but I gotta head back to St. Louis so I can air this tomorrow for you guys.
But apparently Mellon bought this place about 10 years ago. That makes perfect sense. He stashed a bunch of the cure up here, knowing it would be the perfect hideout after he released the virus. We should...
It's Lyle's Corner!
And remember, the views expressed on Lyle's Corner don't necessarily reflect those of Mondays in Midtown, the University, Father Biondi, or Jefferson City. It's now time for the Spotlight on St. Louis. This week's Spotlight features my favorite attractions on or near Hampton Road, starting in Forest Park.
St. Louis Zoo. Golf in Forest Park. The world's largest Amoco sign. Joya's Deli, home of the hot salami. Mama Giscano's, home of the best roast beef sandwich in St. Louis. Record Exchange. Just picked up my new Lee Greenwood Christmas album.
Cool segment. Well, that's our show for this week. From Jefferson City and from all of our friends here at Mondays in Midtown, just Tim Ivaldi. Appreciate him coming along. It's been fun. We're off next week for fall break. We'll see you the week after, if not before.